Hello and welcome to all the ghouls and vampires out there. I'm Joe, and here's a rather different video than usual. It's more a video essay, and we might have a discussion about it. Jonathan Harker, the unsung heroic knight of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and why he deserves respect. In Bram Stoker's Dracula, there's no character more respected for his nerve, for his courage, and for his ability to think and fight under pressure than Jonathan Harker. There is no other character who could have survived as he did in Dracula's castle, and no other who could have had, after that, the ability to summon up the bravery to not only defy, but to scare off the vampire. It was Harker who slew Dracula in the novel. It is he who rescues Mina from the curse of the vampire, and he whom Dracula targets more than any other character throughout the novel. And yet, there is no other character more despised in modern cinema where this story is concerned, save for perhaps Quincy Morris, and none more despised by academia in my experience. It is a very strange thing just how divisive Jonathan Harker is. Likely it has to do with the fact that, contrary to those who romanticize Dracula from the novel, it is Harker whom Mina chooses, and Harker whom she loves more than her own life. It is Jonathan Harker who is her soulmate, and he who risks all for her. What is even more remarkable is how even after Mina is bitten by Dracula, let's be honest, the vampire bite has always been a euphemism for violation, at least in the context of this story. The truth is that Jonathan still stands by her, and she by him. Really, the whole story is much more of a love story than a horror one. And the love story, at the heart of it, is the Harker romance, and not that of Dracula, who serves as the villain. Really, the turning of the vampire into the hero, one who just needed love and who longed for it across centuries, is the process by which this great novel was subverted across a century and deconstructed. It has flipped good with evil and evil with good. It has turned Harker into the villain somehow, and Dracula into the hero, just as it has turned Mina from a victim who overcomes her own violation to become a faithful partner to her husband and the embodiment of every female virtue into something of a sex kitten who rejects her husband for a quick night of pleasure with Dracula. Really, it romanticizes the violation of woman, if one is honest. And I suppose this is why I've never liked any of the adaptations of this novel, or most shows about vampires, as I'm quite attached to the Harker marriage and to the themes as presented by Bram Stoker. Honestly, I have much more respect and appreciation for the Dracula Dead and Loving It adaptation for making fun of the other adaptations than I do the adaptations proper. If you like them, though, love what you love. I do love the Hammer movies that follow after the first film, especially Brides of Dracula, which in spirit seems the most faithful to the novel. I really do love the Universal and Hammer sequels to their respective Dracula movies. And their adaptations do have much that is worth boasting about, as they are pretty good films, despite not being what I would have wanted of them. Among those themes is the vow of knighthood, to protect Mina from all harm that all the men swear. They all do so in the context of honoring the Queen of Love of sorts, but their love for her is that of a brotherhood for their sister, or in Helsing's case, of a doting father for his favorite daughter. Jonathan, though, is a character in the novel who plays the role of dashing hero. He's full of righteous fury on behalf of his violated wife and struggles earnestly to take the fight to Dracula. This is the true nature of the character. He is a knight who struggles for love, really, and who wishes to protect what is important to him. If this sounds romantic, it is because it is supposed to be. Bram Stoker was a romantic. He married one of the most impressive women of his age and did so for love. He lived well for an Irishman, amazing when you consider how ill-treated the Irish were at that time, and was someone who evidently loved to write and create. Academia has spoken of repression as key to his character, but when you consider that Dracula's castle is in a way a castle of dreams, or a castle trapped in the past, full of dark magic that nothing modern or urban can resist, but that only the traditional faith, the old ways of Catholicism, can resist or inspire fear in him, then it stands to reason that this isn't about repression at all, but rather it seems to be a commentary that there are forces within this world more vulnerable to traditional ideals and faith than any modern science could possibly conjure forth. There's a great video essay about this very phenomenon by Morgoth, where he analyzes the very big differences that exist between the modern man's perception of the world and that of Dracula. And the castle, trapped in the past, as he puts it, is a haunting place full of magic, enchantment, and beauty, is also a place of great peril. This is why it seems so different and foreign to us Westerners. We're venturing into the past. The trouble is that it is not a past that might offer safety, so to speak, to any modern man or woman, let alone one molded after the knightly archetype like Jonathan. This is also why Helsing is so important, also as a man rooted in the past, as modern science cannot possibly fight Dracula quite so well as the old faith and traditions as represented by Helsing. Science is impressive, especially in our era, but there's a nefariousness about it as well. In many ways, it stands in complete defiance to how man was meant to live, and how traditional man has existed hitherto our own era. That said, Catholicism represents an ancient force in this case. In a way, it is supposed to represent an older way of life, an older England or France, an older Europe for that matter. In this way, if Catholicism is the traditional, the next thing that one should consider is the classic knight or heroic cycle. In this case, a knight's motivation would be love. And what do knights fight? Dragons. And in this case, given the very well-known meaning of the term Dracula, and also the connotations of son of the devil, we need not really suppose why it was important that it be a fellowship of men, each bound by sacred oaths, armed with crosses, and revering a kind of maternal figure, fiercer and more beatific than any other woman alive, is front and center. Mina is not meant to be some sort of prize for Dracula, but rather she is supposed to be a princess in a way, or a saintly figure meant to be rescued by Jonathan, who rides off into the sunset with her. I may have complained about a few points in Travis Blake's Dracula sequel, but I can at least say the prose is good, that he respected the union of Mina and Jonathan, from what I can see, and portrayed the latter as intelligent and capable, in contrast to how most adaptations depict the latter. Most don't seem to like him, and propose he is incompetent, stupid, or somehow wicked. It's time we give the main character of Stoker's novel some respect. The novel would not be what it is without him. Certainly there is something magical and haunting about the way Dracula speaks of the old world, that of the Slavs, back when they fought the Ottomans. There is something truly fascinating about his speech. But the trouble is that as much as there is good in traditions and good to be found going back to some things, what Dracula's morality in the story about and what his vampirism has come to represent in modern pop culture is honestly not only disgusting but regressive and immoral. The brutality of targeting women and children and the manner in which Jonathan takes to combat, his classic-styled heroism, his desperation to help the helpless and the less fortunate, his desperation to save Mina, all this is a total contrast to not only the curse of vampirism and the wickedness of Dracula. What is also kind of funny is how Dracula seems to adapt so easily to urban society once in London, while the knights who lead the charge against him seem to take up the advantage once out of England and in Transylvania. It is only then that they get the upper hand. Only in modernity could people romanticize a corpse, a vampire, and dream of sensual pleasure with it, whilst deriding a living man. But the reality is that there is a pre-modernity to an extent, in the way the group of men are structured, and the way their quest is structured. They seek to stop the dragon that has invaded the locality, and to save the Lady Fair. I do wonder if maybe at the time, 100 years ago, Jonathan, Quincy, Arthur, and Seward were romanticized rather than Dracula, and if the shift is because we have become so upside down as to not know what is, and not see what is right and proper, and what isn't. There is more to the story, but for now I'll let it be here. But do consider next time you crack open Stoker's novel, if maybe the lover archetype Jonathan isn't maybe the true hero of the story, and his friends are his fellow knights rushing forward to help Sir Gawain, Jonathan, save his love. And if maybe there's something of Merlin in Dr. Van Helsing. Maybe this last connection will merit such an article in the future, when I next write about horror. Now, what do you think of this essay?
It brings up very important points, and there's a reason why whenever vampires are brought in, why I get a hard nope, and it's very instinctual.
Because actually, I'll say this: vampire fiction is garbage.
Yeah.
Now there are exceptions: the Hammer Dracula movies, the Universal movies, and when I say the movies, I mean the sequels. The sequels are pretty good. They're all very good, except for one or two. I'm referring to the Dracula 1972 nonsense. But the Dracula novel is itself a classic masterpiece of literary fiction. It is literary perfection, and we read it together. Mm-hmm. And you enjoyed it. I loved it. I've loved it since I was 11. But the thing is, Jonathan Harker is the hero. And this is... The weird thing is, I think that there's only one living director who could probably faithfully portray the novel, and kind of did in spirit, and faithfully, if he were to adapt the novel, like scene for scene, he would do a fantastic job, and that's Stephen Sommers. His Van Helsing movie very much puts Van Helsing in the role of Harker, and the one woman, I forget her name, in the role of Mina, to an extent. And Dracula is very much, well, Dracula. In spirit, outside, it's the most faithful after Brides of Dracula. Brides of Dracula does not have Dracula in it, or Harker, but arguably in there, Van Helsing is Jonathan Harker. And I think it's Danielle. She is, well, Mina. And, she's beautiful enough to play any kind of Mina in any Dracula movie. But the thing is, the Dracula movies are always focused on Dracula, when Dracula is not the focus of the Dracula novel. Jonathan Harker is. Harker and Mina are the focus. And it's a great shame that no Dracula story has been able to do this. And I would argue the first writers of vampire novels, or a vampire novel or story, to ever get the courage to focus on the hero rather than I'm going to have a sexy vampire, are you and I with Varcola.
Yeah.
Which is very much focused on Arnfried, our hero, rather than Varcola.
There is a trend that happens on TV that when people forget who the hero is and want to sympathize too much with the villain, that series often...
It sucks.
It sucks and it goes down the drain. People are so focused on this complicated villain with motives, with this backstory to explain everything, whereas when sometimes you don't need that to have a great villain.
No, and the thing is, they forget what a villain is. The villain is meant to be evil.
Exactly.
And the thing is, we're romanticizing evil and saying good is evil. It's Orwell. Slavery is freedom. Lies are truth. Good is evil. Evil is good. Slavery is freedom. And lies are truth. This is the nature of what Orwell wrote about. And I would argue that the subversion of Dracula, where Jonathan Harker's a weakling, is a cuckold, and is ultimately a failure, and Mina loves Drac more than she likes her actual true love. This is a work of subversion and deconstruction in modernity, and only in modernity would this happen. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button, and to check out our Substack, where we write a ton of these sort of articles. The article to the Jonathan Harker essay will be in the description down below.